Okay, something that I absolutely love at breakfast time is a good pancake, but pancakes aren't always the healthiest way to start our day. So, good news, as little chefs, we have a great new recipe, and it is going to be buckwheat pancakes, which is a really great way to make something that's not super healthful, a little bit more healthful for us, so we're starting our day on a correct foot. What is the first thing we're gonna do to execute this recipe, Chef Meg?
Well, since we've already washed our hands, we're gonna make sure we read through our ingredient list and our method.
And make sure that we have all of our tools. Okay, so ingredients that we need for this recipe today: 3/4 of a cup of buckwheat flour. And buckwheat is a really cool flour. It's actually not a wheat product. It is the ground up seed of the buckwheat plant. So just a little fun tidbit there. It can be really dark in color sometimes and even make your pancakes look a little bit green, which is a little bit funky, but also a little bit fun, right?
Sure.
Our next ingredient is 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. This is something that most of us have at home. And adding the all-purpose flour just gives our pancakes a little bit more stability. We also have 1 tablespoon of sugar, which we have here. We have all natural cane sugar here. We're gonna go ahead and use 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And this little gem here is a really important piece of our recipe because it's actually a chemical leavening agent. And this is Chef Meg's area of expertise. What is a chemical leavening agent?
Sure. So a leavening agent is something that creates a gas byproduct, which makes your product rise. So we use it in breads or pancakes. Yeast does the same thing when you're making homemade bread.
Cool. It creates little bubbles with the heat or with whatever product we mix it with. In this case, when the buttermilk, which has some acidity to it, mixes with the baking soda, it creates this kind of little agitation, which makes little bubbles, and we'll actually see those little bubbles when we cook our pancakes. Okay, our next ingredient is 1 teaspoon of salt. Just regular table salt will do. 1 cup of buttermilk, 2 eggs. We used cage-free organic eggs, more healthy for you, a little bit more expensive, but give them a try. They have really bright yellow yolks and have a really, really great flavor. Would be cool one day if you had your mom or dad help you cook an organic free-range egg and a normal egg that you would buy at the grocery store that's non-organic or non-free range, and just do a taste comparison. It might be a cool little task to do one day. And we also have 2 tablespoons of melted butter. We use salted. You can totally use unsalted as well. Okay, method. Something a little bit unique in this method, huh?
Yes, as good news, we read our method ahead of time so we didn't get started and then have to backtrack. But we realized that we have dry ingredients and wet ingredients.
Cool. And what we're going to do is put all of our wet ingredients in one bowl and dry ingredients in another. In particular, why that's important is in one of our bowls, we're going to do our dry ingredients. And this guy here that we talked about, our leavening agent, is super important to keep the dry ingredients. Basically, we're going to make sure that all of the flours that we use and the rest of our dry ingredients are mixed really, really well with the baking soda and it's dispersed nicely so that when we add our wet ingredients to it, we yield the best product we can when we start to cook our pancakes. Okay, let's get started with our dry ingredients. Chef Megan's gonna take care of our 2 flours, our buckwheat and our all-purpose are already measured out. I'm gonna add a tablespoon of our sugar. Quarter teaspoon of our salt. And just so you know, when we're measuring things, we have this nice heap here. We don't want to pack ingredients into our measurements, whether it be the flour into the cup or any dry ingredients into our tablespoons. We want to get a nice heap and then just take your finger and make it nice and flat, and that's the best way to measure dry ingredients. Okay, and I need 1/2 teaspoon of the almighty important baking soda. If we didn't add this ingredient, we would not have pancakes. We would have something closer to a crepe, which is like a French flat pancake. Okay, our dry ingredients are all set, and we will get started with wet ingredients. Okay, let's move on to our wet ingredients portion of our recipe. So I'm gonna start with the buttermilk, and because this is a liquid, we're gonna use a liquid measure to use as opposed to a dry measure that we use for the flour. Now the tricky thing with measuring liquid is none of us can be trusted, even the professional chefs, and I'll show you why. If we were to hold this up, and you'll see all the markings are right here, whether you're using metric or an American standard. So we want to just find out what exactly you're measuring, where you're trying to measure to, get a good eye for it, and go ahead and pour. I'm looking for 1 cup here. And the reason we have to leave it flat, and we really have to get on the level of this cup, we want to make sure that we're eyeing it from this level, because from up here, it looks like I'm a little bit short. If I hold it up here like this, I could be thinking that it's a little bit more, and actually I'm wrong, just because we don't really hold our hand completely straight. So we want to make sure for accuracy that we get on the level, make sure that we are perfectly all set, and add it to our bowl. Chef Meg is going to show us how to crack an egg safely. So let's move on to that.
Sure. So when cracking an egg, you want to make sure you're cracking it on the bowl that you're actually using and not on your cutting board. Sometimes when we crack them, the inside can kind of get on the cutting board and spread some of those germs. What I'm going to do is actually use the liquid measure so that if I get a shell in there, I don't have to go digging through my buttermilk. So I'm going to just gently tap it and kind of turn it around until you get a nice crack, and then use my thumbs to pull it open. So our recipe calls for 2 eggs, and that one cracked pretty well. I didn't even break it. Okay, awesome. 2 eggs. I'm going to add them into my buttermilk mixture. You want to give that a nice good whisk, Chef Nicole?
Yes, I'm going to quickly add our 2 tablespoons of butter first.
Perfect.
We already have that nice and melted. And so we want to make sure that we kind of find the yolk and give it a nice break so that less work for ourselves. And when we're whisking, it's a habit of ours to whisk in a circle like this. That's because we're just trained to mix like that. But when you're whisking, you actually want to just have a quick little jerking motion with your wrist, just like this. Basically, when you're whisking, you're looking to agitate, is the term, I would say, to just agitate the mixture enough so that it's nice and incorporated. And there are all different types of whisks. Some of them have lots of little wires, and some of them only have a couple. But for pancakes, what we're using, this whisk is perfectly fine, just a typical household. Okay. Now we got our wet and dry, we have our wet ingredients all mixed up here. We're ready to roll. And we're just going to go ahead and add them to our dry ingredients that have been nicely mixed.
And we'll keep moving our dirty dishes out of the way so we have a nice clean workspace.
And I'm going to, and this is a really important piece of making pancakes, doughs develop something called gluten, which are little strands that get tighter the more that you kind of move them around. So we want to make sure that we have a nice tender pancake that's really fluffy and not tough to eat. It has a tough texture. So we just basically want to incorporate, would be the term, the wet and dry ingredients enough so that they are just gently mixed together. And something that's cool to do with pancakes is give it a nice mix and then actually let it sit for like 5 to 10 minutes or so, just so it gets that nice buttermilk saturated into your flours and gives it that nice flavor.
Yep, really lets everything incorporate, gives the sugar a chance to dissolve and really spread that flavor, as well as it gives the leavening agent time to start to develop those gases the longer you let it sit.
Let's get ready to cook our pancakes. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this whisk. Thank you, Chef Megan.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's get started cooking our pancakes. We're gonna turn our stove to about a medium. And it's important to let our pan heat up just for a couple seconds, and then we're gonna go ahead and add our butter. You can also use any type of oil that you want, olive oil or veggie oil if you prefer, especially if you're really new at cooking, because butter can burn easily, but that's why we want to keep our pan at a nice medium. So we're just going to rub enough butter in the pan, melt a little bit so that we have a nice non-stick cooking surface. We don't want to add too much fat and calories to our pan. Should be good. And we're gonna let our cooking fat, in this case butter, heat up a little bit. And then, I know sometimes we like to make big giant pancakes, but we want to make sure that we're making our pancakes small enough so that we can control them in the pan, meaning we can give them a nice good flip when they're ready to be flipped. Just let your utensil drip as much as you want in the pan so that you don't carry it across the counter. And you'll notice I have my bowl of pancake mix also right over the pan so that my little drips are going right in the pan. Okay? So with pancakes, we want to just really take our time and be patient. It's not something that we want to cook on really high heat because then the butter and the pancake can burn pretty easily. And as you can see, we're starting to see little bubbles here, and the edges will start to get a little bit more opaque in color. Okay, I broke up my little pancake friends here that were joined at the hip, and we're going to go ahead and flip our pancake. What you want to do is pull it and then give it a flip. Just pull it away. You can make the pan work for you and tilt it up a little bit and give it a flip. And what you're going to also notice is that it's going to start to get puffy in different areas. That's the chemical leavener that we were talking about. Just adding those little air bubbles actually help the pancake rise and give it a nice fluffy consistency. And we're going to cook it on this side for about another 2 minutes, and then if you want, we can go ahead and flip it over again to get a little bit more browning on it, and then you're ready to go. Okay, Chef Meg, here are our buckwheat pancakes. Oh, we gotta get them out of the pan.
Those look great.
Just gonna go ahead and plate them here.
Looks like they're ready to enjoy, but sometimes we want to use maple syrup or another topping. Since syrup's not necessarily the healthiest of choices, we're gonna go ahead and use our leftover fruit salsa that we made for our parfaits. It's a great way to incorporate some sweetness and add those extra vitamins and nutrients.
Love it. And it looks really pretty.
That's true.
There we go. Let me know how you're doing. You can always find me at chefnicole.com or on Facebook. I'm always posting new recipes that you may want to try at home. See you in the kitchen.